It's a bye-week Friday, and as you could tell, we have a guest. Let's introduce him next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning. Happy Friday. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's with FanDuel, FanDuel.com. Head there to get started.
Okay, hello. It is Friday of the bye week for Nebraska. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer, as always, is drinking his coffee. And here with me this morning, Connor from 1620 The Zone in Omaha. And we are excited to be joined today by Clayton Collier, the sports director of Channel 6, WOWT in Omaha. Clayton, welcome in to the Locked On Nebraska pod.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. Joining you from Long Island, New York this weekend. I'm out at a wedding on the bye week, but wanted to make sure we carved out some time. I Frankensteined a setup here for you guys. I found a ring light down in the basement. It might be my sister's old one or something. I don't know. I'm at my parents' house today, going to a wedding this weekend out in Jersey, but saw my parents last night. So I've got a beautiful setup for you guys. Managed to put this together last second. So
it looks
we
like
see all the we see the credentials behind you.
Yeah, we got a lot of Mets from over the years. Plenty of Big East. I went to Seton Hall. I found the pink out game that I went to when Doug McDermott went off. Or no, that wasn't that one. That was back at Newark for that. But that was a pink out game, January 30th, 2016, and that was my first experience seeing a packed out CHI, and that was really cool. I remembered that from college. So when this job came up last summer, I was like, they were telling me about how much support there is for Creighton basketball. I was like, oh, yeah, I know. And they're like, Husker football, by the way, that's a religion around here. I knew about that as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what we want to get into. So you got to the state of Nebraska last summer, just as Matt Rhule was getting started, the Matt Rhule coaching era. I know your background is from the Big East, and you're a Long Island guy, New York guy, a Seton Hall guy, but you were in Memphis. We've talked about before you got to Omaha. So you're accustomed to seeing the big dogs from the Big East roll into Omaha. I know that provides comfort for you, but of course, the big task of a sports anchor in Omaha is Nebraska football. So we want to ask you, as we get into this conversation, about what it's like to cover Matt Rhule from your perspective and Nebraska football. But first, give us your thoughts, Clayton, on where you think the second half of this season in Lincoln is headed.
Yeah, I mean, they're in for a challenge now, right? The competition really dials up, but I mean, off to a 5-1 start. Mitch, I think you tweeted it, and I've been thinking about it the last couple of weeks after that first half at Purdue, that really outside of your top couple teams, you're going to have imperfect teams that make bowl games, that now are going to qualify for the CFP, that aren't complete, that have flaws. Nebraska is a good team that has flaws. And, you know, as Matt Rhule said, they're growing. And that might not be for everybody, but it's clear. I mean, you know, obviously they made improvements at quarterback, at receiver. Their defense continues to make strides and ascend as they, you know, have their development. Special teams, as we know, is a big issue outside of Brian Buschini right now. The run game, Matt Rhule mentioned that he wants to see improve in that second half. So, I mean, we're going to see some real challenges. You know, there's no easy games on the road. Your best path, obviously, to 6 wins comes at home against Wisconsin or against UCLA, or likely both for those, and then see if you can take one on the road between Indiana or Iowa is really what I think you're looking at for that second half. You know, sure, do you maybe get real lucky and you win one out at USC or at Ohio State? I think that's what we're going to be looking at. But from year one to year two, I don't think anybody can argue that this team does not look markedly improved from what we saw last year.
What are some of the highlights, Clayton, of, I mean, we could do this season or really since you've been here? I mean, it marks a pretty important, like, you get here and the Matt Rhule era kind of starts. What are the first 2 or 3 things you think of about your time covering Nebraska football, or just over this past season?
Well, on a personal front, that Minnesota game was a lot, because my wife was still down in Memphis. So I drove the 6 hours up, I think like day 5 of work. I went and did that game. That was a Thursday. Creighton had a big commit, Jackson McAndrew, who's from Minneapolis. So I shot a story with him the next morning at Friday, drove the 6 hours down, did high school football, left the station at midnight, got it back to the airport around 4 a.m., flew back to Memphis, through Minneapolis where I had just been, picked up my wife, put everything in the U-Haul, and then drove the 10 hours up to Omaha, dumped all the stuff in a storage unit. We were staying at an Airbnb, and then looked at houses, and then I was out to Colorado. So just that crazy turnaround is the most memorable, I think, on a personal front, just because I was crisscrossing the country for both work and for moving fully back up to Omaha. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, that was a big turnaround. So that was definitely memorable. Seeing Camp Randall for the first time was really cool. Even though that game went south late, that was awesome. The Colorado game here was really memorable. Just seeing, that fan base turned up all the way, that kind of rivalry. I saw it out at Colorado, all the hate for Nebraska. You're doing live shots, and in between, people see that you're wearing a red polo and they're saying 4-letter words in front of Nebraska. So I got a hint of that last year out at Folsom, but seeing the passion of Husker fans against Colorado, and then to see them, really put it to them on prime time, that was really cool.
So you've had this indoctrination to Nebraska fans. I'd say it's a pretty accurate representation of the way things are around Nebraska football these past 18 games, like just a little bit of everything. There's been heartache, there's been celebration, there have been highs and lows that are very symbolic and representative of the last 20 years. Knowing what you've learned, will Nebraska fans be happy with the 7 or 8 win season? I mean, you kind of laid it out in your first answer about what it's going to take to get there. Will they be happy with 7 or 8 wins if that's where the Huskers are sitting on the end of the day on Black Friday?
I mean, I don't know how you argue with ending that bowl drought. Like, no matter what it is this year, that's the goal, right? As long as you're playing football and your holiday plans are disrupted, that's the goal, right? So beyond that, I think year 3, you can start to look towards that with, the way that the Matt Rhule projection has gone, at Temple and Baylor. But this year, Matt Rhule's never going to say it. He's going to say what he said last year when they were 5-3, that they want to win all the remaining games. But getting to 6 is the baseline for this year. So anything beyond that, I think Husker fans should be happy. I know the expectation is raised when you get a 5-star quarterback, when you get, all the, the Jamal Banks of the Isaiah Nailors of the world. But I think ultimately, 7-8 wins. I think Husker fans should be happy right now, especially with what you're looking at with that second half, with all the road games that they have coming up.
I think people, maybe people don't have as much of an outside perspective, especially for a guy like you who's been sort of around and seen some things. Give us a sense, just from your perspective, of what Nebraska fans actually have with Dylan Raiola right now. And I don't know that people really appreciate that on a day-by-day basis enough.
Yeah, I mean, an incredibly mature freshman, right? Like, you have to remind yourself that this kid's a freshman right now, both what he does on the field and just how he conducts himself, in a post-game press conference. It really sounds like you're listening to Dominic Raiola right up there, and just the work ethic mixed with just, knowing how to respectfully answer every question. He's a great soundbite when it comes to the post-game press conference. But yeah, in terms of on the field, just his IQ, when he's talking about cadences, everything, like Mitch has asked about that before, just a level of, asking Matt Rhule, do you ever stop yourself and remind yourself that he's a freshman? I know they're not trying to treat him like that. They want him to be a junior. They want him to, treating him like it's his junior year, I think is the phrase that Matt Rhule's been using. So they are, and I mean, he's rising to that occasion. He's prepped for it. He has the talent for it, and he's showing it right now.
Does he remind you? I mean, like I mentioned in the beginning, covering the NBA, the Grizzlies, you've covered some Ole Miss. Is that right in your time at Memphis? And
yeah. It's secondary to the Memphis Tigers. When I was there,
sure.
It was Mike Norvell was making the Cotton Bowl and all that, so that was a little
right
for a lot of those.
Right.
But we had Lane Kiffin towards the tail end there.
Yeah, and the Big East basketball stuff. Like, does Raiola and like his youthful maturity remind you of anyone that you've been around in the sports world?
I mean, in terms of just strictly a young phenom that had success while I was there, it's not a comparison outside of that. But I mean, just the way that Ja Morant gripped Memphis in terms of his talent when he first burst on the scene with the Grizzlies, that's a little bit of the familiarity there. Now, obviously, Ja has had some off-court issues that he's now coming back from, and injuries and all of that. But just in terms of the head-turning must-see talent, that's probably the only reference point that I really have from what I've covered before. And, I think it's been a long time since Nebraska fans have been able to have something quite like that inside Memorial Stadium. And it's really special when it happens.
Absolutely.
All right. We're chatting with Clayton Collier, sports director at WWT Channel 6 in Omaha. Let's take a quick break. We have plenty left to discuss on a Friday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
Okay, Mitch Sherman here to tell you about a new sponsor of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. It's called ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink. This is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after you go out drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's the byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Go out, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best on the next day. Here's how to use it. Drink it at the start of the night. As I said, drink responsibly, pace yourself, hydrate, get a good night of sleep, and then enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnCollege. That's the code at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off.
And I'd like to tell you about our friends from Home Field, which is a great sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. Home Field is an exclusive apparel provider for the Locked On Nebraska podcast, and we love the gear. And it's getting a little cooler outside. You're going to need to gear up for some of these late October and early November games. You'll love it, and it's an exciting time here in the middle of the college football season. Home Field is here to make your experience more enjoyable. They're a premium collegiate apparel brand based out of Indianapolis. But as I always say, they know college football and they make the apparel because they know college football. And you'll love it because of exactly that. It's incredibly comfortable and it looks fantastic. You're going to be one of the coolest people at the tailgate if you gear up with Home Field. They're gearing up for the entire season. Hot gear, cold gear, mugs, we're talking jackets, everything in between, and it's curated so that you can wear it the entire season. If you'd upgrade, you could do that. If you'd like the Platinum VIP box, you can get your hands on that, where you could get a new hat or a ringer or a VIP koozie. Check it out. Visit the Home Field website, homefieldapparel.com, and we're going to get you started with the code GBR24, which gets you 15% off at checkout. Once again, that's code GBR24 at checkout. Thanks for supporting us, the Locked On Nebraska pod, by supporting Home Field. Check out all the Nebraska apparel and special items at homefieldapparel.com. All right, welcome back. Once again, back with Clayton Collier, WWT Sports Director, Channel 6 in Omaha. Okay, so I was going to ask you this. We were talking about the fan base a little bit, Clayton. So how, and you mentioned, taking some trips out this way and sort of, wow, what's the CHI Health? They get 17,000 to watch Creighton basketball. They get 80,000 to watch Nebraska football every single week. It's like a religion. How do you react now that you're in it, watching Husker fans react to stuff? What is your reaction to that reaction?
Well, first of all, I know, and this is going to get to my answer. If there's any fan base that probably needs that probiotic right now, it's probably Phillies fans.
Yes, that's right.
After the Mets are moving on to the NLCS, managed to get the paper, benefit of being out here in New York for a day.
Congrats.
So you're a Mets guy? I need to interrupt. I just need to ask if you're a Mets guy, because we have some issues if you're not. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
So if we can put that to bed.
Mets okay on this podcast. Yankees at the moment, not okay.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Royals, guys.
No, that's fair. I was hoping to see a Kansas City Mets World Series, because then I could actually go down and probably catch a game or two.
Yeah, we could run it back from 2015, but unfortunately.
Listen, that 2015 World Series, the moment that they defeated the Blue Jays, I was like, the Mets just lost. I mean, the power pitching that the Mets had would have been perfect against Jose Bautista, against the Blue Jays. The contact guys going up against the Royals, where you have Moustakas and all those guys. I was like, no, this isn't going to go well. And it did.
Love it.
But
good memories for us for sure.
Yeah. But I bring up the Mets to say, as somebody that grew up a Mets fan, that got my start covering Mets games in high school and in college, I do see some parallels to Nebraska fan base, to the Nebraska fan base, to Husker Nation, in terms of, like, if you're under the age of 35 to 40, you probably don't remember the glory days really well. But you've been born into it. You're passionate. You can't look away, no matter good, bad, worse. Probably the last 10 or so years, a lot of fans have felt pretty snake bitten that nothing is going to go right, that they're always kind of waiting for the bottom to fall out. And until it kind of bursts through like a grimace running through the wall for the Mets, you're apprehensive that it's not going to be there until suddenly they're making the NLCS, and that it is the absolute best thing that you could have experienced as a sports fan, because you put in that much time and been there through the thick and thin. But so Nebraska fans are just incredibly loyal. It's something that I've seen, here in New York, when there's, the Yankees, my whole upbringing were winning World Series, that Mets fans have stuck with them through, everything that has gone wrong, and Husker fans through this bowl drought, through a lot of lean years following, the run through the 90s, through 70 and 71, that they've stuck through, that they're passionate. And, like I said before, it's like a religion out there. So the loyalty and the passion that I've seen seems kind of weirdly familiar to me.
Sure.
And it's something that I've really enjoyed kind of being a part of as well.
So Matt Rhule has been a change for us around here. I think both the Nebraska fans, and certainly in the media culture, Nebraska's been through a number of coaches over the past 20 years, and have never really encountered anyone like Rhule, who is as good in front of the microphone, and thinks along the lines of what he wants to say when he's in front of us. I think more so than anyone who's ever been in that spot at Nebraska. What have been your impressions, your interactions, just your observations in being in that media environment and covering Matt Rhule?
Yeah, I mean, my first impression was, I remember when everybody was kind of getting used to him, just the way he talks with the hands, and just very impassioned like that. That's something I'm used to from being here in the Northeast, the New York area. Like, he talks like what I'm used to. So it sounded very familiar to me, where I think it maybe had a little bit of a learning curve for some people along the way. But you're right, in terms of the honesty, the frankness that you see is not common in college football. There's a lot of, as I said before, apprehension of, being careful. Like at Big Ten Media Days, I was asking, I think it was Ryan Walters, I asked him what he thought of Nebraska's offseason additions, and he said, we're just focused on ourselves. Like, I don't know, in college basketball and other sports, like you can say some basic positive things about another team, even if you haven't really looked that far into it. There's a little bit of paranoia around a lot. But while Matt Rhule's
just a little.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, Matt Rhule's careful with what he says. He says, terrific. He gives off terrific sound bites. I think about it with, like, when I go back to pull a sound bite for a sportscast, usually we try to keep it to 15 or 20 seconds. And he'll give like a minute and a half speech that I was just like, well, this was the best thing that he said today, and this was awesome. how the heck do I try to get this in a time slot that's good for air? And so, you try to chop it down and make sure you tweet out the full thing so that people get a chance to actually see what he had said. But yeah, it is refreshing to, be able to ask a question and more often than not from Matt Rhule get, a sufficient answer that at least you can cover that topic properly on.
Okay, so this might be a little inside baseball, but I find it so interesting, and I've always asked the local newscasters about this. So I have a 4-hour radio show. You were just talking about trying to tell the story in the time that you're allotted, which is, I don't know, 4 to 8 minutes. A lot of maybe less. What is it? How much time do you normally have to get out what you want to get out?
Yeah. So at 5 o'clock now, these are just the slotted times. If there's stuff going on, then we can get, a little additional time as well. But at 5, we have a minute 15. At 6:30, we have a minute 30. And then at 10, we have 2 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So how do you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. That is totally foreign. I can't imagine trying to get out that in what I want to say in a minute and a half.
Well, my last market, we had 90 seconds and we had a countdown clock and a whistle. So, so in here having 2 minutes, it feels like I got room to stretch my arms a little bit. But no, that's why the minute and a half full soundbite from Matt Rhule, you don't usually have time from unless it was something that, was headline news for the entire day. So you try to chop down where you can to make sure that the point he was making is properly expressed, but just trying to, condense it to, like I said, 15 to 20 seconds because you only have so much time and you have other sports going on. That said, our producers are awesome where if I'm like, hey, look, we've got Matt Rhule, we've got, network times for basketball, we've got this, we've got that, they'll accommodate us, but that's the base layer, like run of the mill day for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Such a different medium to be dealing with. All right, we're going to take a second break. When we come back, we're going to finish up with Clayton, talk a little bit about traveling around the Big Ten, what his experiences have been so far, where he's looking forward to going this year and in the future. That's coming up next. Okay, break here to tell you about Robinhood Gold, sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up all the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive 1% unlimited deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investment involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC.
And one more time, let's tell you about the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you could check out the latest live stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on that same page where you make your wagers. So in order to get you started, we want to get you started on the right side of the ledger. You're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, all you have to do is head to FanDuel.com, place that first $5 bet, and then you're going to be guaranteed $200 in bonus bets. That is with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Once again, head to FanDuel.com right now to get started.
All right, final segment on this Friday show. Mitch Sherman of The Athletic here with Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone in Omaha, and we are joined, special guest, by Clayton Collier, WOWT Channel 6 sports director in Omaha. So, Clayton, we've been out on the road covering Nebraska just once this year in the first 6 weeks of the season, but that's about to change. 4 road trips coming up in the final 6 games for Nebraska. Will you be out to each of those? Are you going to send Grace Boyles, your fantastic cohort there at Channel 6 out to see any road games?
Yeah, Grace is going to get to go to Indiana. I made the long drive twice going to Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days and out to Purdue. So I didn't want the hat trick. So
nice.
So Grace will hold it down for us out at Indiana. I'll be at Ohio State, and we'll be out there at Iowa as well.
Yeah, definitely make sure you tune in for Clayton and Grace and the work that they do on WOWT. Grace, I believe, is a Michigan grad. Is this possible that she's covering Nebraska as a Wolverine?
You know, when I started last year, that was the one thing that she mentioned. She was like, so I really want to cover the Michigan game. I was like, okay, yep, absolutely. I'll hang back. You got it. But I know better than to hold a Michigan native back from a Michigan game. So, yeah.
All right. We'll have to get Grace on we got to get Grace on the podcast to talk about
absolutely. That. Grace does an awesome job. She is a huge Big Ten fan as well. She's in there watching, and you can tell. I don't even need to check the score on what happened with Michigan. You just can see it on her face when you walk in, whether they won or lost.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the Washington game wasn't too good.
Yeah, that's right.
So I ran into you. Sorry. I ran into you in the press box at Purdue, and we had a conversation that I wanted to ask you about. When you're out on the road and you're looking for ways to eat and sleep and get through the day, often it's not as luxurious as some back home might lead us to believe. Tell us a little bit about what you did for dinner the night before the Purdue game.
Yeah, you and I had a much different version of events. You were like, yeah, I flew in. I think you had a rental car issue or something that you were telling me about.
A little bit. Yeah, almost ran out of gas. It was more a me issue.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that sounds horrible that you had to fly the majority of the way. No, after the drive, I got everything done. As you know, getting a hotel around Purdue in West Lafayette, it's not easy. So everybody kind of had their roulette of what random city in Indiana you stayed at the night before. I stayed in Rensselaer, I think is how you say it. And
wouldn't know.
Yeah. There was a 40-minute drive down and back. Long story short, I got done about 9:50, and I pull up my phone, try to find something. The only thing that was open was, I think, like an Arby's and a Taco Bell. And so I was like, I haven't had Taco Bell in a long time. So, all right, we'll do it. And it wasn't a good choice, but it was the only choice. So went with that. But yeah, Taco Bell's not a sponsor of the Locked On Nebraska podcast, right?
No. So why hadn't you had Taco Bell in a while?
I knew you were going to ask that one. So the Taco Bell used to be near my old station in Memphis. And there was one time where I was like, okay, we're going to do it. And so I went over there. I ordered some Doritos Locos tacos, and they rolled down the window, and they said, sorry, we can't have, you can't have any tacos today. I said, why? They said, sorry, our meat hose is clogged. I was like,
all right.
Yeah, no, okay. They said, can we get you anything else? They said, absolutely not. And I drove on my way to find something else.
That's what you get. That's what you get on the road when you go out. It's why I asked the story. When you go out and you cover these teams, you guys out there, you think we have this luxurious lifestyle. We're eating out of a meat hose. That's what it is.
It's not glamorous. This could be a bit, Clayton, where you could just go around to all the road trips that you go on. You go around to various Big Ten Taco Bells, and then you grade them at the end of the year. Something like
Taco
that.
Bells. Yeah, I don't know if my body would agree with that. On paper it sounds great, but no, I don't think I could run up and down the field for those games after that too many times.
No.
But the moral of the story is you should go to Arby's then instead.
We'll get you an In-N-Out burger in LA next month.
There you go.
Yeah, sounds great. But guys, just you mentioned it and you asked about it earlier, but I mean, the passion of Nebraska fans is pretty unmatched in terms of anything that I've found here. I wanted to mention, like, when I moved here, not here, I'm in New York at the moment, but out to Omaha, I go across the street and my neighbor that's 85 is talking to me about the Devaney years and the Osborne years. And my neighbor next door, I go to get my dog from inside, and she said, oh, I saw you on the post-game press conference last night. I was like, you were watching that stream? She's like, oh, yeah, I watch every press conference. I was like, what? Like, I didn't know that people are watching like Tuesday press conferences. Like, just the passion that people have for this team is just so special. And it just really says what Nebraska is about, because whether it's volleyball, 90,000 fans, the most 92,003, the most incredible thing was going down to Tampa and seeing 15,000 people come down for the Final Four, or 17,000 at CHI. Just the support that people show for the things that are Nebraska and theirs is something special that, as long as there's something there that is worth seeing and that worth supporting for them, they're going to do it. And that's really, really cool. And my biggest takeaway from this fan base so far.
So it's been a thing around here where people will sort of like, they'll maybe, they like to go to all the games, maybe they'll skip a road game in order to save back a little bit for that bowl game trip. Well, it's been a long time since Nebraska's been to a bowl game. So you're probably, cross your fingers, I guess, for people out there, one more win, you're going to see a bowl game trip this year. And then you will see the power of Husker fans unleashed, because they don't just go for the game, Clayton, they go for the whole week. And so we'll see. Do you have any hopes on where the bowl location might be in your first time around with a bowl game with Nebraska?
Yeah, going off of likely destinations, I think the Music City Bowl would be really cool. Out in Nashville, I at least have some familiarity to where to go for that. I had an awesome time covering Creighton's run to the Sweet 16 and March Madness, but having lived in Memphis for the last 6 years, there was part of that pulling at me to want to go, with them down to Memphis. But I remember seeing some Memphis media members tweeting like, "Oh, I'm sure that the folks in Memphis aren't, Memphis tourism isn't popping champagne over Nebraska getting drawn for over here." And I just remember responding to them. I was like, "You wait, because they'll be popping the good champagne after they see how people come in, and then they suddenly a week later they're like, oh my gosh, it's a sea of red." Like, yep. Listen, man, the Nebraska is a sleeping fan base that is waiting to explode, and whatever bowl game gets the Huskers is going to see it.
Can you be a tour guide on Beale Street?
Yeah, a lot of the locals, like Beale Street is a great spot to go to, but there's a lot of there's just so many incredible food places all around Memphis. Barbecue shop on Madison. That's the best. Barbecue. That's the best barbecue you're going to find down there. So.
All right. Well, I want to give a shout out while we're here with you to some of our favorites there at WWT. First of all, John Nicely. I had to check last night as I was putting this together to make sure that John was covering sports for WWT when I was born, Clayton. And he, I turned on the news last night. Looks like he's got 20 years left. Like, just going. He's an icon, an institution. If you've grown up in Omaha as Connor and I did, then you saw John Nicely on your TV. It was part of your upbringing.
Oh yeah.
So shout out to John.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to John. He, I don't think I've run into somebody in Omaha yet that's come up to me that hasn't followed up with, "I see you every night," with, "I played golf with John at this day or this time." Like, I don't know how he's had that many rounds of golf to play, but I think he's gotten just about every person that can handle a club in Omaha out on the course. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. But sorry, good.
And I also want to mention Rusty Lord, who is a kind of like a friend via the workplace. Rusty helped me out a few years ago when I was writing an article that looked back at the weather intricacies of Scott Frost's would have been Nebraska debut, the Akron game that was rained out. And there was like this weird confluence of weather systems that caused it to rain for like 11 straight hours in Lincoln, and thunder and lightning, not just rain. So Rusty was awesome in like breaking that down for me a year later and explaining it. And I had a lot of fun talking to him. And he's definitely like a person on social media who interacts a lot on the with the sports world. So I love it.
Oh yeah. I'll give you a little inside peek behind the curtain. So if somebody's missing something at our station, a lot of the time they'll send out an email blast, like looking for, my car keys or this or that every once in a while. It's become this running joke because it started with a can of hairspray that went missing. And somebody said, has anybody seen my hairspray? And John nicely replies all and says, go check with Rusty. I think he took it. And now every time somebody's missing something, someone replies all and says it's probably Rusty that has it. So I think eventually Rusty responded and said, can somebody take the keys from John nicely? He keeps parking the bus over me. So.
Throwing him under the bus.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Well, Clayton, this has been fantastic. Thanks for doing this on your bye weekend. Enjoy the splendors of the East Coast for now, but we'll welcome you back next week when it's go time.
Oh yeah, bagels and pizza all weekend. Then it's back to salads and Valentinos and Runza. So yeah,
awesome.
Thank you so much, guys.
The WOWT sports director in Omaha. We appreciate you guys making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast, and you can check it out. It's in the description to this show. That's where the link is. That is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.